profound loss today. The world mourns the death of Mother Teresa. The Roman Catholic nun died of a heart attack in Calcutta, India, at the age of 87. Thousands of people are gathering to pay their respects to Mother Teresa, who was known for her unfailing devotion to the sick and the poor. She was honored with the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979. Pope John Paul says he is deeply saddened by her death and was very close to Mother Teresa, who dedicated her life to the poor. President Clinton says her comfort to the poor, the suffering, and the dying served as an inspiration. She was admired the world over for her humility and her compassion.
She had an inner power. She had a certitude. She knew where she was going, and it's the power that you usually associate with active people in the worldly sense. But hers was devoted to, as she said, the poorest of the poor, and being somebody for those who had no one. And that's just incredible. It just struck me this morning as I read an article from Croatia about a man who killed 80 people with his own hands. That force of evil is overcome by a very powerful force, and that was Mother Teresa. I mean, you call it love, call it religion. I don't know that there's a word for it, but it's positive, and she exemplified it, and I never met another human being that even came close.
Those who met Mother Teresa often remarked on her charisma and her magnetic ability to attract donations and recruits. Al Hinman profiles her achievements.
Mother Teresa spent her life taking care of those she lovingly called the poorest of the poor. Young and old alike loved the Roman Catholic nun, calling her a saint on earth. Mother Teresa said she saw Christ in the faces of the poor, the outcast, the maimed, and the dying. She felt they all deserved what she called the delicate love of God. Mother Teresa preached a simple message. The poor are the gift of God. They are Christ in distressing disguise. Wherever Mother Teresa went, her message was the same: love the poor.
I think it is very important that we all realize that they are our brothers and sisters, and that we owe them that love and care and concern.
Mother Teresa took her message of care and concern around the world. She regularly visited the victims of major disasters, praying for their recovery and helping raise money for their care. Mother Teresa often took her requests for help directly to the Vatican. Those who watched her in action said she was never overwhelmed by those in power. Despite her small physical presence, she was only 5 feet tall. Mother Teresa's missionaries of charity grew from 12 original followers to tens of thousands of sisters and supporters around the world. Calcutta, India was Mother Teresa's adopted home. It's where she began her work with the poor. It's where she earned the nickname, the Saint of the Gutters. Mother Teresa was born of Albanian parents in what's now Macedonia, part of the former Yugoslavia. It was one of many troubled areas to receive both her presence and her prayers. Mother Teresa's tireless efforts in behalf of world peace brought her a number of important humanitarian awards, including the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979. Mother Teresa said such earthly rewards were important only if they helped her help the world's needy.
What is very beautiful that many people thank me for giving them the opportunity to do works of love. It has helped so many people, they would have never had a chance to do anything for the poor.
The small nun with the large heart worked tirelessly to the very end. Mother Teresa's own heart, later in life, required a pacemaker to keep it going.
Works of love are works of peace. Where there is love, there is peace.
Mother Teresa's message of love and of hope reached millions. It is the message she prayed would not end when her time on earth was over.
The world also is preparing to say...
Tonight's top stories, the death of Mother Teresa. The world mourns the end of a saintly life. The same week we say goodbye to a princess. Plus, the final chapter to Diana's young life. Millions line the streets to say goodbye as the Queen calls for a nation to unite in grief.
Good evening from London. I'm Ernie Anastas, UPN 9 News. It is Saturday morning here in England, and in just a few hours, London becomes the center of the world. The funeral for Princess Diana. Millions will line the streets, and billions will be watching on television around the world. In just a few moments, we'll have live team coverage for you. But first tonight, the woman who's been called the living saint is dead. Mother Teresa touched us all. Her life was a life of giving. My co-anchor Brenda Blackman joins us right now at UPN 9 News for our team coverage. Good evening, Brenda.
Good evening, Ernie. Good evening, everyone. A bell tolled in Calcutta today. A simple message to the world. Mother Teresa was gone. One world leader said it best. From the president of France comes these words. With Mother Teresa gone, there is less love in the world, less compassion, less light. And we have this video in from India. Crowds of people weeping openly. The body of Mother Teresa already in full view for mourners. The Roman Catholic nun died today of a massive heart attack. She was 87 years old. We have live team coverage of the death of the so-called living saint. Reggie Harris is live with reaction to her death. But first, Dick Brennan is live outside her mission in the Bronx with a look back. Dick?
Well, Brenda, believe it or not, this is the national headquarters for Mother Teresa's mission in the United States. And as you can see, it's a simple brick building in the South Bronx, and it's right across the street from the Patterson Projects. This is where Mother Teresa wanted to be, with the people who loved her and the people who needed her. She stood only 4 feet 11, but she was a towering figure of compassion. Mother Teresa taught the world about giving, sharing, and loving.
The news came as a great shock. We all feel Mother's death as a personal loss. I'm sure you all do as well.
Mother Teresa had been critically ill earlier this year, but soon recovered. So when she died of a heart attack in Calcutta today, her followers were stunned.
The sisters were shocked because we were told as late as Wednesday that Mother's health was better than we thought.
Mother Teresa was born in 1910 in Yugoslavia. She became a nun at 18 and ran convent schools in India. She took the name Sister Teresa. And when she taught students too poor to attend school, they called her Mother. In 1979, she won the Nobel Peace Prize. She told the organization to cancel the banquet and give the savings to the poor. 26 years ago, she came to New York and established her order in the South Bronx.
They cared about enough about the South Bronx to come and see us. You know, she was God sent. She was God sent.
This past June, she visited with Princess Diana.
When I saw the two of them, they was across the street as I was passing, and it said she was here. And I come over and I watched. It was beautiful. And now that both of them is gone, it's very sad.
Mother Teresa established the first AIDS hospice right here in New York City. She worked tirelessly for the sick and the needy. And when she negotiated for the poor, she showed no mercy.
She was enormously charming and very sure that you would do exactly what she wanted you to do. But with a smile. The sense that you had about her was once you finished the very serious business that you were talking about, she had a group of demands and you would just comply with them. I mean, there was no question.
Mother Teresa had the heart of a saint, but also the savvy of a CEO and could move easily in any world.
She could talk to the Congress, she could talk to someone in the project, she could talk to anybody because she always, she was like the gospel in Technicolor.
This woman met Mother Teresa in June, shortly after her doctor had told her she was dying. Now she's recovered.
When she says to me, we pray together, I think that made the miracle.
Funeral arrangements are tentatively set for Wednesday. Mother Teresa was once asked if she feared death. She said, no, I see it all the time. Reporting live from the Bronx, Dick Brennan, UPN 9 News. Brenda?
Thanks, Dick. Tonight, Mother Teresa is being remembered by people all over the world. Reggie Harris continues our team coverage live in Newark with more reaction to her death. Reggie?
Brenda, Sacred Heart Basilica here in Newark was packed with people this afternoon when news of Mother Teresa's death came. They were celebrating a joyous event, the ordination of a new bishop. When the congregation was told, they were instantly overcome by emotion. In Newark, it was coincidental that announcement of Mother Teresa's death came as clergy from 3 states gathered for the ordination of Auxiliary Bishop Paul Butkowski. An audible gasp went up when congregants were told of the passing.
Just a few minutes before we began the liturgy, I received word of the death of Mother Teresa.
Despite Mother Teresa's advanced age and failing health, the crowd was left stunned and in tears. Sisters of the Missionaries of Charity likely learned of their leader's passing during this service. They took communion, then left through a back door, returning to their Newark convent. Debbie Rejo recalled feeling Mother Teresa here before she saw her 2 years ago.
You could feel her presence. You could feel her presence walking into the cathedral at the other end. I mean, she's filled with many, 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 many graces and love and peace in her heart.
Cardinal O'Connor learned before the ordination began and said it was difficult for him to go on with the service.
She would call me from Calcutta. She'd call me from her sick bed. And it's just very difficult for me to believe, even though I'm grateful that now she's at peace.
President Clinton recalled the petite Mother Teresa as one of the giants of our time.
I was profoundly moved by her conviction and her courage.
A reporter's phone call to the convent here brought just one sentence: "We do not wish to speak. We have been praying." That's typical of the Missionaries of Charity. They work with the poorest of the poor, don't expect credit for it, and live a Spartan life themselves. Their basic premise is that we need nothing more than what we need for today. The Newark convent sits amid vacant lots. The sisters run a soup kitchen here and a homeless shelter.
I think that is a lesson that we'll all carry on. The life of Mother Teresa doesn't end today. Just one chapter of it ends today. I think we will know of Mother's goodness and of Mother's kindness and graciousness for a long, long time, because we'll see it in those whose lives she touched.
The Archbishop went on saying Mother Teresa's life of what he called radical faith will live on in all of us. Live in Newark, Reggie Harris, UPN 9 News. Brenda?
Thanks, Reggie. You've heard her being called a living saint, but will the church make her sainthood official? That's coming up at 10:36. Now to our other top story, the death of Diana. We go back to my co-anchor Ernie Anastas live in London. Ernie?
Yes, good evening once again, Brenda. It is just after 3 a.m. Saturday morning here in London. Dawn will break shortly. And the heart of this nation broken by...
In a moment, first, the news of another death, another woman, but this one may be a saint one day. She spent her life changing lives and touching hearts, including Princess Di's.
Mother Teresa died today. She was 87. She died at her convent in Calcutta in India. It was a heart attack. Nuns gathered in the chapel with her body. Thousands were outside in the rain in the street, many crying at the loss of the woman who said she had a calling from Jesus to serve the poorest of the poor.
And one neighborhood in the Bronx was hit hard by the news. Mother Teresa was theirs, their own Nobel Peace Prize winner even. And she went there often and helped the nuns of her order help the poor. Craig Treadway is at the convent in the South Bronx right now. Craig?
Well, John, this is the Patterson-Mott Haven section of the South Bronx, and when folks around here thought of Mother Teresa, they remembered her as a living saint, and many gathered in front of her mission here on 145th Street. And in talking to a lot of them, it was plain to see that the small feet of Mother Teresa left some pretty big footprints on this community.
And when she gets in her confirmation, her middle name will be Teresa.
Little Ivani Perez is too young to understand her brush with greatness, but her mother does. She remembers with gratitude the day Mother Teresa blessed her two youngest children here at her Missionary of Charities order.
She picked up the baby and she blessed the baby, and it was wonderful.
To this woman, clutching her most cherished possession, Mother Teresa gave the gift of happiness.
When she touched me, I feel like the whole heaven was with me. Jesus is like a sacred heart for me from now on.
She remembered me from Queen of Peace, and I was talking to her. And I went across the street to say something to her, say hello. And she looked at me, she said, she's very nice.
Wilhelmina Anderson is one of those touched that Mother Teresa would remember her during her last visit here. Jerome Marshall and George Bailey remember working alongside the mother in the mission soup kitchen.
She wasn't just a figurehead. She actually came down here and were around the people here.
You got a lot of people in the city, especially the big wigs that got the money and would go
I don't want to be bothered with that. That wasn't her.
Perhaps the fondest memories are with Father Jesus of St. Rita's Parish, who met Mother Teresa upon his arrival at the parish in 1991. The two quickly became close friends.
He not only let us say, okay, to remember Mother Teresa as a nice person, a smiling person. No, we need to put in practice all the lessons that we learned from Mother Teresa.
And, of course, Sister Mary Dominga, the Mother Superior here at the mission, said that the sisters were very saddened by the passing of Mother Teresa, and they said they could best remember her by carrying on her work, which they indeed plan to do. A number of other people were remembering Mother Teresa today. One of them, of course, the head of the Archdiocese here in New York, John Cardinal O'Connor, who had this to say.
And there's no question in my mind that she's now entering into great glory. But for me, it's a very deep and poignant sense of loss and almost impossible to talk about any longer.
Earlier, there were a number of people who brought flowers here, and from those who know Mother Teresa, they told me that it was the kind of display of affection that she probably would have shunned. She would rather the money spent on those flowers be used to feed the poor. In the Patterson-Mott Haven section of the South Bronx, Craig Treadway, Fox 5 News. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Craig. And like the Cardinal, Mayor Giuliani choked back tears remembering Mother Teresa. He called her a saint who devoted her life to helping people who really needed it. Here in our city, her organization, the Sisters of Charity, cared for poor kids and people with AIDS. The mayor held a medal that she gave him during a recent visit, called for a moment of silence, and asked all of us to pray for her.
Arrangements are still being made, but the funeral will be Wednesday, the 51st anniversary of her calling to the church. Susan Kelleher looks back on the life of a woman they called a saint on earth.
Let us thank God for his great love in bringing us together today.
Mother Teresa, the frail nun with an iron spirit, traveled to Baltimore in May for a special mass with her Sisters of Charity, the mission she founded 45 years ago. In recent years, she battled health problems, but never lost her sense of humor. At one press conference, she thanked the media for showing up.
Thank you for coming.
Last June, she honored the city of Newark with a visit to witness new nuns take their vows. The world's most famous Roman Catholic nun was at one with the world's destitute. Honored by presidents and popes, Mother Teresa always wore a white sari edged in blue, the garment of India's lowest caste.
We can all together proclaim the joy of spreading peace, the joy of loving one another, and the joy acknowledging that the poorest of the poor are our brothers and sisters.
In 1949, she began the Missionaries of Charity. She said God called her to work among the poor of Calcutta. To the sick and dying, she gave food, clean sheets, and dignity. Today, the order has shelters in over 25 countries, 3,000 people working with the needy.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for 1979 to Mother Teresa.
In 1979, Mother Teresa won the Nobel Peace Prize for her good works. She said then, "Death is nothing but going home to God." Now the world mourns a real-life saint finally gone home. Susan Kelleher, Fox News.
President Clinton said that the deaths of Princess Diana and now Mother Teresa offer the world a chance to reflect. The president is still vacationing on Martha's Vineyard. He called Mother Teresa one of the giants of our time. The First Lady is in London for Princess Diana's funeral.
And Rosanna, that funeral is now just hours away. Diana has started on her final journey. Her body moved from St. James Palace to her home, Kensington Palace. The procession starts in less than 6 hours. Mike Emanuel reports.
Brenda Blackman. Brenda?
Thanks, Ernie. To many, Mother Teresa was a living saint for her work serving the sick and the poor. But to actually be canonized is a long and tedious process. And it's hard to believe, but there is no guarantee Mother Teresa will be named a saint. That's the focus of tonight's story Behind the Story.
People are not hungry just for bread. They're hungry for love.
I think the world both loses and gains a saint. The world loses a woman who walked this world in as holy a fashion as anyone I've ever known.
but who will now, I believe, be face to face with Almighty God and will radiate that holiness upon the rest of us.
At St. Patrick's Cathedral, parishioners prayed before a shrine to the one many called a living saint.
She was a saint who lived on earth for a long time, and we feel that she's already a saint, and we're sure that she'll be canonized soon.
It's very possible that she will not be declared a saint.
Father William Elder recently prepared a formal presentation for the canonization of Pierre Toussaint, an 18th century man who volunteered to remain a slave so he could care for the needy. Elder says centuries ago, sainthood was sometimes declared quickly, but the modern Catholic Church usually requires considerable debate and a minimum 5-year wait after death. Finally, formal sainthood is decreed by the Pope.
Obviously, in the popular mind, she is someone who is thought of as a saint, but that remains to be proven. So we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see, first of all, if there is a continuing devotion to Mother Teresa.
The Pope hasn't said he will declare Mother Teresa a saint yet. He did say, however, her death touched him deeply because of her commitment to the poor.
Joan London said goodbye to Good Morning America, and that story tops our eBiz. This was John.
Sue Simmons, Janice Huff, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4 at 11.
An unforgettable image, two of the world's most remarkable women together. Tonight, the world is saddened to lose both of them. Good evening. Mother Teresa was an inspiration to Princess Diana and countless others.
Mother Teresa opened her heart and dedicated her life to the poor, and at the age of 87, that heart stopped beating. She died in Calcutta, where crowds of weeping people stood in the rain in sorrow. Michelle Marsh is here now with rare scenes from the life of a woman so many people considered a living saint.
Chuck, Sue, some of the footage we're about to show you is from a documentary produced by a woman who was very close to Mother Teresa. Jan Petrie spent years watching this extraordinary woman who dedicated her life to helping the poor and outcast.
God speaks in the silence of the heart, and we listen.
The message, it seemed, was always clear to this girl born in 1910 in what became Yugoslavia, a girl whose given name was Agnes. When she was 17, she left home to become a nun, taking the name Teresa. But the real turning point in this remarkable life came in Mother Teresa's late 30s, when she received what she described as a calling within a calling. She left her convent in Calcutta, where she was teaching, and went out among the poorest of the poor, lived among them, cared for them, loved them. Mother Teresa took her dream and expanded it. She created an order, the Missionaries of Charity. And now, nearly 50 years later, that order includes 4,000 sisters in more than 100 countries.
She carried her message of love, simplicity, and service to the tri-state area. Mother Teresa made dozens of visits here over the last 20 years, some very private, some very public. Back in June of 1995, she visited the Cathedral Basilica of the Sacred Heart in Newark.
She came here to welcome 10 nuns into her order. It's a day Archbishop Theodore McCarrick will cherish forever.
When she arrived, everyone wanted to be with her. They wanted to touch her. They wanted to talk to her.
I spoke to McCarrick before Mother Teresa's death.
She lives in a world that this world would consider impossible. Because how could you figure that this little lady would have established more than 500 houses around the world in so many countries? And taking care of the poorest of the poor, a work that even governments don't do well.
Some people feel that you're almost like a living saint. How do you feel about that?
Holiness is not the luxury of the few. Holiness is a simple duty for you and for me.
She was humble, and she had a surprisingly good sense of humor.
Somebody asked me, what will you do when there'll be no more poor in the world? And I said, we'll be unemployed.
In 1979, she received the Nobel Prize. Mother Teresa said she'd only accept it if the money were given to the poor. Doctors discovered her heart problem not long after that, but she continued to work tirelessly from the streets of Beirut to the streets of New York, helping AIDS patients and the sick.
Mother Teresa believed the hunger in America was different than other places she'd seen.
Yes, there is hunger. Maybe not the hunger for a piece of bread, but there is a terrible hunger for love.
Now, many believe Mother Teresa is an ideal candidate for sainthood, but the process could take some time. Only 5 years after a death can the bishop begin collecting proof of, quote, heroic virtue and reputation of holiness of the person. And the church requires that 2 miracles be attributed to the candidate. Mother Teresa will be buried in Calcutta on Wednesday. And Chuck and Sue, I had the very good fortune back in the early 80s of meeting Mother Teresa, sitting with her with a one-on-one interview, and I will never forget that. She took my hand, looked at me intensely, and said, family, that is the most important thing. And I will just remember that conversation as long as I live.
Simple but very profound wisdom.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Michelle.
Her health had been failing, but it seemed Mother Teresa would live forever. Perhaps she will, in the hearts of millions. Right now, Andrew Glassman is at the Missionaries of Charity Convent in the Bronx, which was established by Mother Teresa. Andrew?
And in fact, Sue, in 1971, this was the first mission established by Mother Teresa in North America. It's here right out on East 145th Street in the heart of the South Bronx. And inside tonight, they're describing this as a great personal loss. John Cardinal O'Connor said she had the charisma of holiness, a simplicity and humility, and yet she knew how to get things done. He tells the story of the day she came to New York, said she wanted a house to start an AIDS hospice. It was hers that day. O'Connor called her a saint on earth.
I think that she's already a saint in the full sense of the term. If she's not in heaven right now, then I'm terrified of dying because I have no chance of ever getting there.
In St. Patrick's Cathedral, where there will be a memorial service held for Mother Teresa Monday at 10 a.m., candles were lit beneath her picture. She was a conservative Roman Catholic nun, but her dedication to charity touched people of all faiths.
She loved all of humanity. She gave to everybody. She was extremely selfless.
From the slums of Calcutta, Mother Teresa expanded her life's work among and for the poor here in the United States, choosing first the Bronx. This mission would later become the national headquarters for dozens of homes that would open across the country.
She was the holiest person on earth, I believe. And there are a lot of people on this earth.
The best tribute that we can give Mother is to continue to live our life, to love Jesus, to serve him in the poorest of the poor, as she taught us by her example and by her life.
She treated every human person exactly the same way. A king, a queen, a president, a peasant, the poorest person in the street.
You were talking earlier about the process it takes to become formally canonized as a saint and that it can take years. Tonight, Cardinal O'Connor said he'd be surprised if that wasn't done for Mother Teresa in record time. Live tonight from the Mott Haven section of the Bronx, Andrew Glassman, News Channel 4.
Andrew, thank you. Mother Teresa's death at 87 was especially disturbing for those who worked closely with her. At the Cathedral Basilica of the Sacred Heart in Newark, the announcement of her death brought sadness and a gasp of shock.
Just a few minutes before we began the liturgy, I received word of the death of Mother Teresa.
The announcement was made during an ordination ceremony. Among those in attendance, nuns from Mother Teresa's local Missionaries of Charity group. After receiving communion, they were escorted out a back entrance to pray and grieve in private.
And now Princess Diana, and just an amazing scene in London all day and into the night. Her funeral is hours away now, and the crowds continue to gather. They were delighted earlier at the sight of the...
Clark, Dana Tyler, Ira Joe Fisher, and Warner Wolf. More news in less time, every time.
Enormous crowds line the streets of London tonight, awaiting the funeral procession for Princess Diana. It begins in a few hours. And the body of Mother Teresa lies in state in Calcutta, India, as her Sisters of Charity mourn her death. Good evening. We'll have more on the death of Mother Teresa in a few moments.
First of all, though, Princess Diana's funeral procession
About the ring Dodi gave Diana that night. Details when our extended coverage of the death of Princess Diana continues.
Now tonight's other major top story. The world mourns the loss of Mother Teresa. Her body now lies in state at her convent in Calcutta, India, where she died of a massive heart attack at age 87. Mother Teresa worked in the slums of Calcutta for 50 years. She was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979. Also, she helped the poor in our area. Our coverage begins tonight with News 2 reporter Lisa Cooley, standing by live in Newark. Lisa?
Well, Stephen, I'm here live in front of the Cathedral Basilica of the Sacred Heart, because this is where John Cardinal O'Connor of New York and Archbishop Theodore McCarrick of Newark first heard about the news of Mother Teresa's death. They were all gathered here to ordain an auxiliary bishop, but when they first heard the news of Mother Teresa's death, well, it was just too much for Cardinal O'Connor.
I think the world both loses and gains a saint. The world loses a woman who walked this world in as holy a fashion as anyone I've ever known.
Inside the cathedral just moments before, Archbishop Theodore McCarrick stunned the congregation with news of Mother Teresa's death.
Just a few minutes before we began the liturgy, I received word of the death of Mother Teresa.
McCarrick told them that Catholics should rejoice because Mother Teresa was on her journey to paradise. And even before the congregation was given the unfortunate news, nuns from Mother Teresa's same order were quickly led out of the cathedral to be told of her death privately. This is the convent that Mother Teresa founded, the Missionaries of Charity, and it sits right in the roughest part of Newark. But that didn't stop Mother Teresa from coming back in June of 1995 when she received 10 women into her order. The Sisters of Charity ran this soup kitchen right next door to the convent, following in the footsteps of Mother Teresa's lifelong dedication to the poorest of the poor. And understandably, the sisters are not commenting. One of them put it simply, "We're praying." Reporting live from Newark, Lisa Cooley, News 2.
Thanks, Lisa. When Mother Teresa visited New York, she stayed at her Missionaries of Charity convent in the Bronx. Her last visit in mid-June. News 2 reporter Sukanya Krishnan joins us now live from outside the convent. There, Sukanya?
Well, Dana, she was 4 feet 11, but for those who had the privilege of meeting Mother Teresa at this East 145th Street mission say she was larger than life. Many who met the modern-day saint say the world was a better place, and Mother Teresa made it that way. East 145th Street, just across from the Patterson Projects, is the site of Mother Teresa's Missionary of Charity. The street's been closed off to traffic for several hours. Now bouquets of flowers, notes, and candles line this quiet street. It's a stark contrast to her visit back on June 18th. Mother Teresa gave a tour of the mission to Princess Diana, trying to raise awareness about AIDS and homelessness. News 2's Vince Dementri talked exclusively to the Angel of Calcutta on her visit to the Big Apple. She said her work was never over.
I want some more people to come and help us.
We'll pass that message along, Mother. God bless you.
In Calcutta, we have more than 50 volunteers. So we must start that here also. God bless you. Thank you.
That's how Mother Teresa viewed her missionary, as a constant work in progress. The tiny 87-year-old touched so many lives, and her death has sent waves of sadness all over the world. But in particular, it has profoundly affected millions of Indians. Here at the Hindu temple in Flushing, Queens, on one of the holiest days in the Hindu calendar, they say special prayers for a woman who transcends religion.
Has lost a very great person. I think he's a very godly person.
Now there's word that Cardinal O'Connor will be holding a mass at 7 o'clock at the mission. Now we believe that it might be open to the public. Now reporting live in the South Bronx, Sukanya Krishnan, News 2.
All right, we'll update that information also as we get more firm plans. We do know a funeral for Mother Teresa is tentatively being planned now for next Wednesday in Calcutta. Pope John Paul says he'll offer a mass for her tomorrow at the Vatican.
Coming up next tonight, new details about the ring Dodi Fayed gave Princess Diana.
Also, the final hours of Diana's life. They're recorded on a tape released today by the Al Fayed family.
And in your weather to check, we have
Diana Williams, Scott Clark with sports, Sam Champion with the exclusive AccuWeather forecast, and the Eyewitness News team. Now, Eyewitness News.
They shared a zeal for helping the poor. Tonight, Mother Teresa follows Princess Diana, dying suddenly in Calcutta. Her passing comes as the royal family takes the exceptional public step of sharing its grief for the death of Diana.
So what I say to you now, as your queen and as a grandmother, I say from my heart.
Good evening. I'm Bill Butel, live in London. In just a few hours from now, the funeral begins for Diana, Princess of Wales. This has been an exceptional week, beginning with the death of a princess and ending tonight with the death of a saint in all but name. Mother Teresa died in Calcutta today of heart failure. We begin our report with her legacy. Before that, we go back to my colleagues, Greg and Diana, in New York.
All right, Bill, thank you very much. Good evening, I'm Greg Hurst.
And I'm Diana Williams. The world has lost one of its greatest living treasures tonight. Mother Teresa gave up a life of privilege as a child to serve the poorest of the poor and to teach us all a lesson in compassion. Eddie Aruza is here now with a look at her extraordinary life. Eddie?
Diana, she was born into a wealthy family in Yugoslavia in 1910. Her birth name, Agnes Gongsa Bojaxio. But at age 18, she cast aside both her name and life of privilege to become Sister Teresa, later Mother Teresa, tireless and selfless defender of the poor and sick. Outside the Calcutta convent where Mother Teresa lived and today died, hordes of people, including many of the poor that she served, lined up as they learned of her death. The 87-year-old's frail body, which survived 2 previous heart attacks, could not withstand a third, which she suffered after attending Mass. News of her passing spread quickly around the world, including to her mission in the Bronx.
And the best tribute that we can give Mother is to continue to live our life as she taught us by her example and by her life.
Her life was one of extraordinary selflessness. At age 18, she entered the Loreto teaching order, which took her from her native Yugoslavia to a high school in Calcutta. She said a turning point in her life came when she took into her home a man she found on the street who had been eaten by worms.
And he said, I've lived like an animal in the street, but I'm going to die as an angel, loved and cared. I've never seen a smile radiating in anybody's face as I saw on the face of that man.
In 1948, she began the rescue of the sick and dying from the gutters of Calcutta. Over 50 years, her work spread throughout the world. Her followers, dressed in the simple Indian sari she adopted as a habit, grew. By last year, the Missionary Sisters of Charity were operating over 500 missions throughout the world. One of those, the Gift of Life Hospice in Greenwich Village, which Mother Teresa herself founded. It was one of the first for AIDS sufferers.
She was a wonderful woman. She showed that God loved us.
She loved every person, and this just radiated from her own person. It was remarkable.
Her increasing influence garnered her the attention of world leaders. Her work was funded by grants and donations from around the world. In 1979, she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. But one of the most memorable encounters involving Mother Teresa came this past June in the Bronx, when she and Princess Diana met at the nuns' mission in Mott Haven. A happy meeting, and one in which no one could predict that the 2 most famous and influential women in the world would both die in less than 3 months and within days of each other. This past March, Mother Teresa chose her successor, Sister Nirmala. The funeral plans are still unclear, but reports are that it will probably take place on Wednesday.
All right, Eddie. Until her final day, Mother Teresa traveled the world, spreading her message of caring that few could forget.
If it was feeding people or getting clothing or whatever it was, she spent very little time speculating on how to reinvent the world. But she worked hard on fixing up the parts that could be fixed, piece by piece.
It's nothing she said. It's just her appearance alone made you know that she was from God. Just her appearance alone. She didn't have to say a word.
What Mother Teresa was about is that she inspired a tremendous group of people to act out these behaviors of compassion.
To be with her was to be with goodness. I am convinced that she is with God, that she is a saint.
She served the poor, the suffering, and the dying. And in so doing, she served as an inspiration and a challenge to all the rest of us. If ever there was a pure heart, it was hers.
And many are saying that Mother Teresa appears to be an ideal candidate for sainthood in the Catholic Church. It's usually a lengthy process, but John Cardinal O'Connor is saying that he thinks it could happen in record time because Mother Teresa was loved by so many.
And in a few hours from now, the world will say its final farewell to Princess Diana. In London, where it is already early Saturday, people have been claiming their spots along the route of her funeral procession. Diana's casket started its final journey in a nighttime move out of St. James Palace. Unprecedented crowds are expected.
Spacewalking to repair a damaged mirror. Preparing to say farewell to a princess. And mourning the loss of a revered humanitarian. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dave Walker. This is CNN Headline News. At this moment, 2 men are floating above the Earth with only spacesuits between them and the vacuum of space. American astronaut Michael Foale and Russian cosmonaut Anatoly Solovyov are conducting a rare international spacewalk to inspect damage to the hull of the Mir space station. The craft was crippled by a collision with a supply ship in June. The impact ruptured the Spectre module and knocked out part of the station's power. The crew won't attempt any major repairs during this reconnaissance spacewalk, which is expected to last more than 5 hours. From heads of state to the homeless, people around the world are remembering Mother Teresa. The 87-year-old Roman Catholic nun died of a massive heart attack today in Calcutta. Her body lies in state in the city where she worked tirelessly to aid the sick and the poor. Her successor as leader of the Missionaries of Charity says the Nobel Peace Laureate will be buried next week on the 51st anniversary of her inspiration to found the order. The nuns say they'll consult the Vatican before making final funeral arrangements. House Speaker Newt Gingrich praised her as Saint Teresa. President Clinton added the world has lost one of its giants. Vacationing on Martha's Vineyard off Massachusetts, Mr. Clinton said Mother Teresa led by serving and showed us the stunning power of simple humility.
She served the poor, the suffering, and the dying. And in so doing, she served as an inspiration and a challenge to all the rest of us. With the power of her humble and unconquerable faith, she touched the lives of millions of people in India, here in the United States, and throughout the world. Like everyone who ever met her, I was profoundly moved by her conviction and her courage.
Former President George Bush concurs, saying, Barbara and I had the greatest respect for Mother Teresa. If there ever was a human being who truly did the Lord's work, it was this wonderful woman. Through the years, Mother Teresa worked tirelessly to help the poor and the destitute. Richard Blystone gives us a glimpse of the life that inspired millions.
She was out of step with some of the most popular values of her time. Where the world enthroned statuesque beauty, she was 4 feet 11, 150 centimeters, and plain. Where possessions were worshipped, she owned 3 saris and a prayer book. In the me generation, selfless. In an age of doubt, single-minded. Amid complexity, simple. Maybe that is why the world revered Mother Teresa. Her powers as one of her legion of helpers was the radiant power of love.
And I think that's why the world's so attracted to her, because in our hearts we can feel that energy of love that she generates.
She left home at 18 for the life of a nun, most of it in a city legendary for poverty, Calcutta, India. She was a convent school headmistress there when half a century ago her second call came. The message quite clear, she said. It was an order. She was to give up everything and follow Jesus into the slums. Her missionaries of charity, now all over the world, serve the most extreme cases, the poorest and most miserable who are always in crisis, the dying with no one to care for them.
People are not hungry just for bread. They're hungry for love. People are not naked only for a piece of cloth. They are naked for that human dignity. People are not only homeless for a room made of bricks, but they are homeless, being rejected, unwanted, unloved. And
one of the worst diseases, said Mother Teresa, is to be nobody to anyone. Over the years, she became somebody to everyone, in different faiths, in different countries, and friend to the most celebrated of celebrities as well as the poorest of the poor. Awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979, she persuaded organizers to scrap the banquet and give the savings to the poor. But inevitably, she had her critics. The forceful personality and unswerving beliefs put her in conflict with several Western liberal ideals, among them the notion that feeding the poor only perpetuates poverty, and hunger should be attacked at its roots with seeds and hoes and population control. Not her job, she said. Her calling was to serve not theories, but individual humans. And her opposition to contraception, divorce, and abortion drew active and vocal criticism, but she was not to be turned.
Abortion is a terrible evil. And if you do not want the child, I want it. Give it to me.
Among Indians who might have seen her mission as a kind of colonial insult, she won acceptance by speaking their language, wearing their clothing, becoming Calcuttaized, a local institution. Mother Teresa was once asked, "Do you think about death?" "Not really," she said. "I see so much of it." Richard Blystone, CNN reporting.
The news of Mother Teresa's death comes amid public grieving for another widely admired woman. In about 4.5 hours, a horse-drawn carriage will carry Diana, Princess of Wales' body in a procession through London to her funeral.
She died yesterday of a heart attack at her convent in Calcutta, India, and will be buried there on Wednesday. She was 87. Dan Ronan tells us many people remember her as a person who cared for those whom others chose to forget.
Mother Teresa was a small and in the later years of her life a frail woman. But those who knew her say her compassion and untiring work with the world's poorest people was truly remarkable.
The world both loses and gains a saint. The world loses a woman who walked this world in as holy a fashion as anyone I've ever known, but who will now, I believe, be face to face with Almighty God and will radiate that holiness upon the rest of us.
For 47 years, Mother Teresa worked to create an international organization, the Missionaries of Charity, dedicated to care for many people the world wanted to forget. A spokesman for Pope John Paul II says the Holy Father is deeply saddened by Mother Teresa's death because he was very close to this sister who dedicated her life to helping the poor. President Clinton, vacationing in Massachusetts, remembered Mother Teresa.
With the passing of Mother Teresa, the world has lost one of the giants of our time. She served the poor, the suffering, and the dying. And in so doing, she served as an inspiration and a challenge to all the rest of us.
Just 3 months ago, Mother Teresa visited the U.S. Capitol and was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest civilian honor Congress can bestow. After news of her death, the House observed a moment of silence in her honor. After he left political office, California's former Governor Jerry Brown moved to India and worked alongside Mother Teresa in Calcutta.
She was absolutely certain, whether it's on abortion or whether it's taking care of the poorest of the poor or whether you put a convent in Haiti or you go to Lebanon, she knew where she was going. And in this world of ambiguity and kind of contrivance, that's very rare.
Mother Teresa won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979 for her work with the poor, and today, the chairman of the Nobel Committee said of her, she was an example of true self-sacrifice in humanitarian work. She became a symbol to the world. Dan Ronan, CNN reporting.
World leaders are fondly remembering Mother Teresa and her work. Former President and Mrs. Reagan said, quote, Mother Teresa personified a boldness of spirit and purity of soul, revered by the entire world. Denying all material comforts, she served as a model of holiness, virtue, and humility. Former President Carter said, quote, her great humanitarian work, her tireless and selfless devotion to others, her sense of mercy and humility were beacons of light in this world. Our best homage to her can be to seek and cultivate the goodness within ourselves and others. American astronaut Michael Foale and Russian cosmonaut Anatoly Solovyev are wrapping up their extensive spacewalk outside the Russian space station Mir. Jill Doherty's been following the story from Moscow and joins us on the
This is an EWTN Newslink special report. She called herself a contemplative in the world, but sadly, Mother Teresa, the beloved foundress of the Missionaries of Charity, is dead. The 86-year-old Nobel Prize winner finally succumbed to heart complications. She leaves behind more than 500 homes worldwide and an order of sisters and brothers devoted to serving the poorest of the poor. Throughout her life, she personified her motto, "Do small things with great love." Born in Albania in 1910, Mother Teresa joined the Sisters of Our Lady of Loreto at the age of 18. But it wasn't until she was almost 40 years old that she experienced what she described as a call within a call. It was a command from God to leave the fashionable school where she taught history, to live among and serve the poorest of the poor. Her response was immediate. Soon former students joined her in her work among the poor, and in 1950, the Missionaries of Charity became an official religious order. Since that time, they have labored in the streets and in the slums of the world, caring for the ignored and the defenseless. In 1979, she received the Nobel Prize for her work. In recent years, Mother Teresa has opened homes to care for AIDS victims in New York, Philadelphia, and Washington. Throughout her apostolate, Mother Teresa eloquently defended the unborn. Last year, I was fortunate enough to interview Mother in Washington, D.C. In what was to be one of her last interviews, she repeated a call that she has sounded all around the world.
So tell them that anybody who doesn't want a child, to give it to Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa wants every little child.
Thank you, Mother.
Because in receiving the child, we receive Jesus.
If I could offer a personal reflection, there was a radiance about Mother Teresa when you met her, a glow that I can only attribute to the hours she spent before the Eucharist. To borrow a phrase from Oscar Wilde, Mother Teresa was a divine wreck. Every crevice in her face, every fold, seemed to be a reflection of the sacrifice and the love that she lavished on all those who met her. Tonight we pray that she is enjoying the peace and comfort of the Lord she touched throughout her life in the distressing disguise of the poor. For all the staff here at EWTN, I'm Raymond Arroyo. May Mother Teresa rest in peace.
EWTN pays tribute to Blessed Kateri Tekakwitha. Pagans as well as Christians knew that her exceptional virtue.
Stay tuned for a performance from history's greatest composers on In Concert, next on EWTN.
Jesus made himself bread of life, that we may have life. He made himself so that you and I can receive him, can live with him, can keep him in our hearts. That is why it's very important that during the day very often we say, Jesus in my heart. I believe in your tender love for me. I love you. Again and again, in union with all the masses being offered throughout the world, I offer you my heart.
The nun who devoted her life to helping those most in need died yesterday of a heart attack. Mourners are gathered outside her Calcutta home. Her body will be taken to a downtown church to allow people to pay their final respects. Funeral services for Mother Teresa are now scheduled for next Saturday. The day's consumer news up next, and we'll have more on Princess Diana's funeral and burial coming up.
The CNN Headline News Allergy Report.
High grass pollen is forecast for Oklahoma. Moderate levels are expected in
His most beloved figures. Inside her body was laid out in a simple habit worn by members of her order. The funeral, which was scheduled for Wednesday, will now be on Saturday. And a nun at the home says that the date was changed so that more people will have a chance to pay their respects. More now from Anita Pretep.
In recent months, Mother Teresa told interviewers and friends she welcomed death. It was a chance, she said, to go home to Jesus. That chance came Friday evening.
She died in her own bedroom, which she would have liked, rather than in a hospital. She was comfortable at the frugal dinner that she ate. And then I think all of a sudden she got a massive heart attack and she died.
In a departure from tradition, India will hold a state funeral for Mother Teresa in Calcutta. State funerals are normally only held for heads of state. The ceremony will take place next Saturday to give enough time to enable many dignitaries from overseas to attend. Saturday has also been declared a day of national mourning across India. Mother Teresa will be buried at the headquarters of the Missionaries of Charity in Calcutta, the city that she loved.
This city is very beloved of Mother Teresa. You know, when she used to be ill in Delhi or elsewhere, she would constantly say to me, "Take me to Calcutta and I'll be all right."
Despite the rain, crowds collected outside her headquarters.
She is the most compassionate lady, and she not only matters much to us, but she matters to every human being.
I feel very sad. I have come from very far to see her a last time.
Mother Teresa's body will be kept for public viewing from Sunday. The mood is somber here. People say they feel orphaned. She was mother to all. They say they will miss her presence, her love, her compassion. Though expected, Mother Teresa's death has certainly created a void. A void her order must now fill. For nearly half a century, nuns of the Missionaries of Charity have been guided and inspired by Mother Teresa. They now draw inspiration from her death. Nuns at her bedside say Mother Teresa's last words were, "Jesus, I love you." Anita Pratap, CNN, Calcutta.
In the Caribbean, residents are bracing for the arrival of Hurricane Erica. At last report, the storm was 120 miles east-northeast of St. Martin, moving west-northwest at 12 miles an hour. Its winds have reached 85 miles an hour. Hurricane warnings extended from Antigua and Montserrat to St. Martin. Puerto Rico and the U.S. and British Virgin Isles remain under a hurricane watch. Coming up in consumer news, how businesses are paying their respect beloved figures. Inside, her small body was laid out in the simple habit worn by members of her order. The funeral, which was scheduled for Wednesday, will now be held on Saturday. A nun at the home says that the date was changed, so more people will have a chance to pay their respects. In other news, a spacewalk gives Mir's crew a closer look at their damaged space module. We'll have an update on that. First, the nation's weather forecast.
Are in peril, especially people with AIDS and the innocent victims of landmines.
The president also praised Mother Teresa in his radio address. A state funeral is being planned for her. That's an honor usually reserved for presidents and prime ministers. The Nobel Peace Prize winner died yesterday at the age of 87. Tomorrow, her body will be moved to the headquarters of the religious order she founded and will lie in state until next Saturday's funeral. It's expected thousands of people will view the body. Now, a check of the nation's weather forecast.
At the CNN Weather Center, I'm Byron Moran with a CNN Headline News weather update.
India's Prime Minister has ordered a state funeral for Mother Teresa, an honor normally conferred on serving presidents and prime ministers. Mother Teresa's body will be moved Sunday from the headquarters of the Order of Nuns she founded to a church where she will lie in state until her funeral next Saturday. Thousands are expected to view the body. Pope John Paul II Saturday called Mother Teresa a luminous example for humanity because of her care for the world's downtrodden. The 87-year-old Catholic nun died Friday of a heart attack. In his weekly radio address Saturday, President Clinton paid tribute to Mother Teresa and Princess Diana. In the live address from his vacation spot on Martha's Vineyard, the president reflected on their legacy.
Mother Teresa and Princess Diana, two women of vastly different backgrounds and worlds, are gone. But each of them, in her own way, has shown us what it is to live a life of meaning through concern for others. That is the great legacy they leave us. Let us honor it. For whether we live to a ripe old age or must leave this life too soon, our time on earth is short, and we live on only through the gifts we give to others who share the journey with us.
The president and daughter Chelsea ate breakfast together Saturday on Martha's Vineyard. Mr. Clinton is scheduled to return to Washington Sunday, ending a 3-week vacation. Lawyers for Paula Jones are saying little about reports they want to bow out of her sexual harassment case against President Clinton. 3 sources told the Associated Press that attorneys Joseph Camarata and Gil Davis.
Teresa, the nun who devoted her life to helping those most in need, died yesterday of a heart attack. Mourners are gathered outside her Calcutta home. Her body will be taken to a downtown church tomorrow to allow people to pay their final respects. The funeral for Mother Teresa is now scheduled for a week from today. In the words of Pope John Paul II, Mother Teresa cared for the destitute, quote, traveling tirelessly the streets of the entire world. He gave her a public eulogy today after celebrating a private mass for the nun. He called her a luminous example for humanity who reached out to the hearts of men and women crushed by the weight of suffering and solitude. In Washington, people gathered at the Embassy of India to write their condolences in a book established in Mother Teresa's memory. It will be open for signing through Monday. During his weekly radio address today, President Clinton remembered Mother Teresa's timeless humanitarian work.
Anyone who ever met Mother Teresa could see that within her very small frame, she carried a very big heart, big enough to follow God's will to show compassion and love for all our children, especially the sick and the forgotten. Mother Teresa once said, "The test at the end of life is not what you do. It is how much of yourself, how much love you put into what you do." Well, Mother Teresa put all of herself, all of her love, into serving mankind. And the world is a much better and nobler place because of how she lived.
Senior administration officials say there are no plans for Mr. Clinton to attend Mother Teresa's funeral. However, First Lady Hillary Rodham Clinton may go. Officials are telling CNN the administration will decide early next week. We'll have the day's news, the rest of the news, after this look at the weather.
At the CNN Weather Center, I'm Byron Miranda with a CNN Headline News weather update. Take a look at the lows for overnight lows, at least in the west, from Montana towards the Pacific Northwest in the 40s.
He did a mass for the beloved nun today. He says that she was an extraordinary person. Mother Teresa's funeral was originally scheduled for Wednesday, but it was pushed back to Saturday to allow people from all over the world to pay their respects. News Channel 4's Carol Ann Riddell reports on the impact Mother Teresa had on the people here in our area.
The loss of Mother Teresa hangs heavy over East 145th Street in the Bronx. Mourners line up outside this brick building, home to the Missionaries of Charity, expressing their grief over her death with flowers, candles, and words of remembrance.
I came on to her once, and she really, nobody knew about it, but she really prayed for me, and she helped me in one time.
She meant a lot to the world and to all the churches and God.
Why did you come here today?
To bring flowers to her.
Mother Teresa's tireless work on behalf of the poor and the sick stretched across the globe. She touched the lives of celebrities, paupers, and ordinary citizens with her unconditional compassion. Maureen Cray, a graduate student at Seton Hall University in New Jersey, met Mother Teresa in June. She describes that meeting as one of the most moving experiences of her life.
She will be a guardian angel for the world that she has touched, and a source of intercession for me especially.
Here in the Bronx, mourners say they're glad to hear Mother Teresa will be given a state funeral, an honor they feel befitting a woman many consider a saint.
If there's ever to be a person that's considered a saint in this day and age, it would be Mother Teresa.
Lord, have mercy. Today during Mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral, Mother Teresa and Princess Diana were remembered as women who reached out to the less fortunate.
They saw the poor, the needy, those suffering, those in peril, and they did something about it. And that's why we celebrate their lives.
Celebrate their lives and mourn their deaths. Carol Ann Riddell, News Channel 4.
Westchester County is marking the passing of Diana and Mother Teresa in a very visible way. The county executive's office says flags there will fly at half-staff until next Saturday in memory of the two world figures.
Time now to look at some other stories making news on this Saturday. Police in Brooklyn say a suspected serial rapist is in custody. This man is suspected of raping and robbing several women.
Detailed autopsy on Paul's body. Investigators say Paul was drunk at the time of the crash.
Well, as Princess Diana was laid to rest, a woman linked to her in friendship and charity work was also mourned. Mother Teresa was remembered today by the Pope and John Cardinal O'Connor. News 2 reporter Paul Ferranges tells us more about the woman who's been called the greatest humanitarian of this century.
The flowers and notes of condolences continued arriving at the Bronx Convent of the Missionaries of Charity today. Early this morning, John Cardinal O'Connor celebrated Mass honoring Mother Teresa, joining missionary nuns in their small chapel. Her death came as a great shock to the nuns here, who heard the frail 87-year-old leader of their order was doing well.
It's really a deep personal loss for each one of us. But the best tribute that we can give Mother is to live as she taught us by her example.
Mother Teresa taught these nuns to do what she said Jesus called her to do more than 50 years ago, to serve the poorest of the poor.
During this morning's Mass, John Cardinal O'Connor spoke to the nuns gathered here in the chapel, recalling the Bible passage from the book of John when Jesus wept at the tomb of his good friend Lazarus, reminding the nuns that when someone you love dies, it's okay to cry.
To this day, O'Connor remembers what Mother Teresa told him the first time they met.
She looked into my eyes and said, "Give God permission." And I've tried to do that ever since, to let God work through me in any way that I can serve him.
In Italy today, the Pope also held a private Mass for Mother Teresa, later telling thousands she made life's wounded experience the tenderness of God. Echoing the Pope, O'Connor called Mother Teresa a saint and said it wasn't a question of if the church would formally recognize her as such, but when. For now, though, he and the nuns say the work, tending to the sick and dying, feeding and clothing the poor, must go on. In India, Mother Teresa's body lies in state at her order's headquarters. Mourners filed past her body, touching her feet, the ultimate sign in Indian culture of respect. A state funeral is planned for next Saturday. Paul Ferranges, News 2.
You know, last time she was here, Mother Teresa had a chance to meet her. It was very, very special. I think today is a very sad day.
It is.
But we must have hope. That's what they say, right?
Absolutely.
So we shall. A lot of other news ahead tonight to tell you about. Next, what happened when a cop found himself on the wrong end of a gun.
Plus, why the man accused in the police torture scandal is being allowed back to work and what Abner Louima's family has to say about it.
In the United States, President Clinton remembered the two women whose loss is being felt by the world, Mother Teresa and Princess Diana. He paid tribute during his weekly radio address Saturday.
Mother Teresa and Princess Diana, two women of vastly different backgrounds and worlds, are gone. But each of them, in her own way, has shown us what it is to live a life of meaning through concern for others. That is the great legacy they leave us. Let us honor it. For whether we live to a ripe old age or must leave this life too soon, our time on earth is short, and we live on only through the gifts we give to others who share the journey with us.
The planning continues in India for the funeral of Mother Teresa. Her body is being moved to St. Thomas's Church in Calcutta for viewing. She will be buried Saturday at the convent that was her home and the headquarters of her order, the Missionaries of Charity. The burial will come after a state funeral, an honor the Indian government normally reserves for heads of state. Clinton administration officials tell CNN there are currently no plans for the president to attend Mother Teresa's funeral, but one possibility is that Mrs. Clinton will attend. President Clinton is wrapping up a 3-week vacation on Martha's Vineyard. He spent the day with daughter Chelsea. Mr. Clinton has said repeatedly this break has special meaning for him. It is the last family vacation before Chelsea goes to college. Attorneys representing Paula Jones and her sexual harassment lawsuit against President Clinton have not commented directly on
tributes being paid to the 87-year-old Roman Catholic nun who died Friday. Sabrina Gibbons has the latest.
The wails of mourners and the peal of church bells filled the Sunday morning air in Calcutta as Mother Teresa's body was carried in a plain wooden coffin from a small chapel to a large church. A line of people half a mile long quickly formed in front of the church to view her body.
Inside the last week, you had, probably two of the most famous women in the world pass away. It's hard to believe, and I was just in shock.
The church is in a fashionable Calcutta neighborhood, far removed from the desperate slums in which she began her missionary work. At a New Delhi leprosy clinic, members of Mother Teresa's order gathered for prayer and reflection.
It was such a privilege for us. Mother has taught us from the beginning how to reach out to the poor in love and service. We have so many people, leprosy patients, orphan children, people dying on the streets. All these unwanted, unloved people, all these are being taken care of by Mother Teresa.
Prayers also in the Philippines, where at a special mass, the Archbishop of Manila said the world had lost a sweetheart. A former Philippine president used a different word.
I have always thought of Mother Teresa as a living saint before, and of course we are sorry that she is now gone, but I know that she can help us even more now that she is with the Lord.
Americans are remembering Mother Teresa too, lining up at the Indian Embassy in Washington to sign a book of condolence.
Just a sad day for all of us, but I know that she'll help us from above.
Well, I thought, there goes another wonderful spirit who filled this earth with good light and good life. And I was sad that she died, but on the other hand, she lived a long and wonderful life and impacted a lot of people.
I don't think Mother Teresa would want to have an elaborate ceremony or people bringing lots of gifts to her. She would want people to carry on the work that she was doing.
Mother Teresa will be buried Saturday in the India she adopted. Her state funeral, an honor usually reserved for heads of state, will come just 3 days after the 51st anniversary of the day she said she received a calling from Jesus to tend to the poorest and the sickest. Sabrina Gibbons, CNN, reporting.
The echoes of the bells have long faded into silence, but in London and elsewhere, the mourning for Princess Diana continues. Good morning. Welcome to CNN Headline News. I'm Toria Talley. Tears are flowing in India today as thousands pay their respects to Mother Teresa. An ambulance carried the body of the 87-year-old Roman Catholic nun from her Missionaries of Charity's headquarters today to Calcutta's largest Catholic church. Along with the tears, the nuns of Mother Teresa's order are offering solemn prayers for the woman who spent her life ministering to the poorest of the poor. Mother Teresa died Friday from a massive heart attack. Her body will lie in state until next Saturday. Then she will be buried in a state funeral, which is usually reserved for the heads of state. Mourners say they will miss the gentle nun, but believe she will continue to watch over them.
Just a sad day for all of us, but I know that she'll help us from above.
Well, I thought, there goes another wonderful spirit who filled this earth with good light and good life. And I was sad that she died, but on the other hand, she lived a long and wonderful life and impacted a lot of people.
In Italy, Pope John Paul II spoke of Mother Teresa's goodness and unselfishness in a private mass today and in a public one yesterday. He says believers and non-believers alike could learn a lot from her eloquent example of unselfish love. Gail Young has the story from Rome.
Next to the Pope, Mother Teresa was the best-known international symbol of Catholicism. In a time when the Vatican is concerned that religion is losing relevance in a modern world, Mother Teresa was a beacon for the Catholic Church.
She was the personification of what it means to be a good Catholic. She was a woman of profound faith, of deep prayer, of complete dedication to God and to others.
The death of the nun was not unexpected. She was extremely frail during her last visit to Rome earlier this summer, although she managed to rise to the occasion. But her passing will be a personal loss to Pope John Paul II. He was devoted to her and her Sisters of Charity. He praised her to the heavens following her death. She was the symbol of Christ on the cross, he told these charity workers. The Pope and the nun shared deeply conservative views about such touchy moral issues as abortion and birth control. Both were criticized at times by more liberal religious figures.
They shared that view of the right of the individual, including the right to life from the moment of conception.
The Pope, preparing for a trip to Latin America, will not be able to attend Mother Teresa's state funeral in Calcutta.
The Pope has said special masses in honor of Mother Teresa, and a high-level Vatican delegation will be attending her funeral later this week.
The Vatican is already receiving calls to proclaim Mother Teresa a saint, a process that takes many years. For now, the Church mourns the passing of a powerful presence who brought the teachings of Catholicism to millions. And the Pope mourns the personal loss of a devoted ally. Gail Young, CNN, Rome.
A day after the world stopped in its footsteps to bid farewell to Britain's Princess Diana, the mourning continues. Admirers of the people's princess are... Live from Atlanta, this is CNN Headline News. I'm Judy Fortin. People in power and people in poverty are honoring Mother Teresa's memory. Pope John Paul celebrated a private mass for her today. The pontiff says he's confident her legacy of self-sacrificing charity work will continue. Thousands of mourners are walking past the nun's remains at a church in Calcutta, India. Her funeral will be held next Saturday at an indoor stadium that seats 10,000. A day after Princess Diana's funeral, flowers are still piling up outside the British monarchy's London palaces. Tens of thousands of mourners. An eloquent example for all, believers and non-believers. He made the comments during a prayer service at his summer retreat Sunday. The Pope will be unable to attend Mother Teresa's funeral on Saturday because he is preparing for a trip to Latin America. Meantime, Mother Teresa lies in state in Calcutta. CNN's Anita Pratap reports.
Thousands of grieving people paid their last respects to Mother Teresa, the Roman Catholic nun who personified love, compassion, and charity. They came from near and far to have a final glimpse of a woman they loved and admired.
She was such a special person to all of us, especially people of Calcutta, right? For the thing that she did, the love and the compassion she showed. Something special.
The mourners were from different nationalities and religions, Hindus, Christians and Muslims, women and men, old and young, bringing flowers and wreaths and handmade posters, tokens of their love and respect. Earlier in the day, in a simple but moving ceremony, Mother Teresa's body was taken from the Mother House, the headquarters of the Missionaries of Charity, the order she founded nearly half a century ago. Her embalmed body was brought to St. Thomas Church in Loretto House, the convent she joined in 1928. This is where ordinary people as well as Indian and overseas dignitaries can see her. Several air conditioners have been installed to cool the church as the humid weather alternated between sunshine and monsoon rains. All through the week, Mother Teresa's body will be kept for public viewing so that her admirers from remote Indian villages to international capitals can come and pay their respects. A state funeral will be held Saturday in this church. Thereafter, Mother Teresa's body will be taken to its final resting place in the Mother House, where she lived and toiled for the poorest of the poor all her life, creating memories that now agonize her bereaved admirers. My mother is gone. She fed me porridge, wails this woman. It was a day of mourning, some tearful, some solemn, some sobbing.
Mother, I cannot forget you.
Anita Pratap, CNN, Calcutta.
Princess Diana's bodyguard reportedly has said he feels partly responsible for her death. The Observer newspaper says Trevor Reese-Jones regained consciousness briefly and told relatives he...
She'll be given a state funeral on Saturday. Now, that's an honor usually accorded only to India's senior politicians and heads of state. Pope John Paul II praised the nun during his first Sunday address since her death. He says she lives in his memory as a tiny figure whose entire existence was the service of the poorest of the poor. India's prime minister compared her to Mahatma Gandhi, who was also a champion of the disadvantaged. Jim Hill reports Mother Teresa's work will continue despite her death.
A largely Spanish-speaking crowd of mourners attended a memorial mass in Los Angeles for Mother Teresa, whose decades of work touched so many. Prayer. Meanwhile, in the shadow of Los Angeles' modern skyline, a small group carried on the work of the Catholic nun, each day ministering to those thrown in the gutter of life.
Señora, ¿cómo ha estado? Bien. Bien. ¿A comer? Nada? You want bebiendo, something to drink?
They come out here, they help us, they feed us. I think that's so beautiful.
Only this day, there was also grief over the death of Mother Teresa.
Thank you.
Mother Teresa founded this branch of the Missionaries of Charity in 1974.
Within her is a spirit of love, which is concerned about bringing humanity together as one in brother and sisterhood.
John is among only 10 brothers serving the Los Angeles area, and one of the few in all of North America. It would appear a part of Mother Teresa's legacy that power, prestige, or even the size of an organization are not the measures of how much good can be done.
How are you feeling today? Good. Okay. An act of love, like Mother says, has infinite implications for the world and for the universe.
Mother Teresa traveled the world visiting her missionaries. On one such journey in 1991, she suffered complications from pneumonia and was treated in a San Diego, California hospital.
Mother Teresa.
Although she is now dead of a heart attack at the age of 87, her missionaries say their work will continue as long as there are people in need. Jim Hill, CNN, Los Angeles.
Mourners continue to pay their respects to Princess Diana one day after her funeral. Flocks of visitors today visited her childhood home.
Today, many New Yorkers and visitors to the city took time out to pay tribute to Mother Teresa.
A seemingly endless stream of mourners stopped by St. Patrick's Cathedral. They lit candles there and quietly prayed to the woman known as the Saint of the Gutters. A shrine was set up in honor of the nun who was small in stature but had a huge presence on the world stage. And a special service in memory of Mother Teresa will be held at the cathedral tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. John Cardinal O'Connor will officiate. And Cardinal O'Connor remembered Mother Teresa at Mass today. He said Mother Teresa's death is a great loss to the world. He said she made a unique contribution to mankind.
She saw Almighty God in every human person. She saw God's eyes. She saw God's lips. When she reached out and touched anyone, she was touching God's hands. She was touching Christ himself.
The Cardinal also mourned the loss of Princess Diana and the victims of the suicide bombing in Jerusalem. He also praised the American labor
$1 million. Now on to our other top story. Here in New York and around the world, people said goodbye to another woman who left this world a better place for her presence, Mother Teresa. We begin our coverage tonight with Alexandra Witt.
They came to pay their last respects and hear a man of God remember the woman they called a living saint.
First words that this woman ever said to me were, give God permission. Let God work through you. Let God reach out to others through you.
Outside the Missionaries of Charity in the Bronx, a couple dozen mourners lit candles and left flowers in her honor. But the Vatican announced today Mother Teresa's sainthood has to wait at least 5 years before being considered. Despite that, Cardinal O'Connor believes the church will raise her to that ultimate status.
There's no question in my mind. The church will make its own declaration in due time. I think it will be soon. No question in my mind but that she's a saint.
Outside St. Pat's, everyone agreed.
I think she was wonderful. She was an inspiration to all of us, and if we could follow her example.
She was about as great as an individual could be.
Do you think she should become a saint?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
John Cardinal O'Connor met Mother Teresa on the day he became a bishop back in 1979. After nearly 2 decades of a very close friendship, the Cardinal said he finds it hard to talk about her death. Come tomorrow, however, he will find the words to memorialize Mother Teresa in a special service here at 11 a.m. At St. Patrick's Cathedral in Midtown, I'm Alexandra Witt, Fox 5 News.
Pope John Paul calls Mother Teresa an inspiration for the world. He talked about his admiration for her during his weekly address. The pontiff praised Mother Teresa as a devoted worker for the poor and an important symbol for the Catholic Church. Meantime, in India, Mother Teresa's body was moved today from a small chapel to a large church to accommodate the thousands of mourners. All over the world, people are paying special tribute to her. Americans lined up at the Indian Embassy in Washington, D.C. to sign a condolence book. Prayers were also offered in the Philippines.
I've always thought of Mother Teresa as a living saint before, and of course we are sorry that she is now gone, but I know that she can help us even more now that she is with the Lord.
Mother Teresa is going to be buried on Saturday after a state funeral ceremony. In India, that's usually reserved for heads of state. Back home, a grim discovery, the body of a newborn baby boy. City workers found it in Albany in the park in a flower bed right next to a statue of Moses. Autopsy results have come back.
Hillary Rodham Clinton will represent the United States. Thousands of mourners in Calcutta lined up to see the Catholic missionary's body lying in state. Mother Teresa died Friday of a heart attack at the age of 87. New York's St. Patrick's Cathedral overflowed with mourners at a mass for Mother Teresa today. Her religious order is vowing to continue her work and dedication to the poor, for which she won a Nobel Peace Prize. As many as 400 people are feared dead off the coast of Haiti in the sinking of a crowded ferry. The Haitian Coast Guard says at least 700 people on the boat, which
world's humblest servants. India will hold a state funeral this Saturday for Mother Teresa, the Catholic nun who devoted her life to caring for the sick and the poor. The Nobel Peace Prize winner died Friday at the age of 87. CNN's Anita Pratap reports that Mother Teresa's followers say they are determined to continue her humanitarian work.
The missionaries of charity flourished, getting publicity, funds, and volunteers primarily due to Mother Teresa's charismatic personality, her dynamism, her inspiring devotion to Jesus. Now, some of her followers are concerned about the future of the order. Mother Teresa was an ordinary Catholic nun with an extraordinary commitment to serve the poorest of the poor. She believed this was the best way to serve Jesus Christ.
That devotion helped Mother Teresa to found the Missionaries of Charity to comfort the dying, the destitute, and the diseased. The order now has nearly 4,000 nuns in more than 100 countries.
Her successor, Sister Nirmala, may lack the charisma of Mother Teresa, but she has other qualities.
She is a deeply religious woman. She is very simple, and I suspect she is also an excellent administrator. I think this combination will see the Missionaries of Charity through.
I'm sure Mother is watching over everything now and praying for all of us.
Father Edward Lejoli has been the spiritual guide for the nuns for 35 years. He acknowledges most of them were drawn by Mother's personality.
I always told them, you have not come here for Mother. You have come here for Jesus. Mother or no mother, you continue. And now it will be so.
We will miss her, but we will continue the work so that what she has done will be continued.
The light of Mother Teresa's presence may have gone out of their lives, but the nuns pledge the flame of her inspiration will live on. Anita Pratap, CNN, Calcutta.
Saturday's funeral for Princess Diana would apparently have been dramatically different had Queen Elizabeth had her way. Britain's Channel 4 News reports the Queen
is behind this crime.
By the thousands, the rich and poor continue tonight to pass through a small church in the slums of Calcutta to say goodbye to Mother Teresa. Mourners arrived early to pay their final farewells. Her order, the Sisters of Charity, sang hymns as the grieving set out flowers. The touch of Mother Teresa could be felt in Brooklyn, where tonight a Mass was celebrated at Our Lady of Victory Church. Earlier, St. Patrick's Cathedral was packed with mourners who heard Cardinal O'Connor praise Mother Teresa.
She gave her life fighting for all human life, always the weakest of the weak and the poorest of the poor.
Including many here. The funeral for Mother Teresa is Saturday. First Lady Hillary Clinton will head the U.S. delegation.
In Brooklyn tonight, there's a new indictment against 2 of the 70th Precinct police officers accused of torturing Abner Louima. Officers Justin Volpe and Charles...
Fund is expected to grow. Jim Wooten, ABC News, London.
In India today, the weather has been having an effect on the preparations for the state funeral of Mother Teresa. It is the rainy season there, and because doctors are worried that all the humidity is causing her body to deteriorate, this will be the last day for people to come to see her. Today the rains let up for longer, and so many people, children included, as you can see, had a chance to visit. At the Vatican tonight, one official said the Pope might be willing to accelerate a campaign for Mother Teresa to be made a saint. The Pope was indeed a very big fan. Still, the path to sainthood is a long one. When we come back, we'll have some of tonight's other news. In Haiti, they are mourning the victims of that disaster at sea, and they're looking for some.
A credit card hotline is collecting an average of $11,000 an hour. Mourners continue to pay their last respects to the Roman Catholic nun who dedicated her life to helping the poor. Mother Teresa will be laid to rest in a state funeral Saturday at an indoor sports stadium. Meanwhile, calls to speed her canonization are flooding the Vatican. Typically, the process doesn't begin until 5 years.
A saint, but the Vatican today said it would take some time to determine Mother Teresa's official status. The faithful do wait outside the church where the nun's body lies in state. At one point, the line reportedly stretched 3 miles. Many of the supporters want the Vatican to waive the 5-year waiting period before Mother Teresa can be considered for sainthood. A Vatican official says, though the Pope could do that, it is unlikely. The 4,000 nuns in her order, the more pressing need is to keep Mother Teresa's legacy alive.
Everybody's carrying it together, and Mother is there praying for us. The whole church, all the people are together with us.
The Lord is giving us the strength to carry the burden, and somehow I feel Mother has not left us really. Her spirit is so much with us.
The 87-year-old nun will be buried in Calcutta. You can watch CNN's live coverage on Saturday, beginning at 12:30 in the morning Eastern Time. Divers are slowly recovering more bodies off the coast of Haiti, where an overcrowded ferry capsized yesterday, trapping more than 100 people inside.
Diana. Andrew Simmons, ITN, Kensington Palace Gardens.
The Vatican is under pressure to put Mother Teresa on a fast track to sainthood. Typically, the process doesn't begin until 5 years after a person's death. In Calcutta, India, lines of people waiting to pay last respects stretch for a mile. On Saturday, thousands of people are expected to attend Mother Teresa's state funeral. Her colleagues say she would appreciate the honor because it draws attention to her work.
She would accept it in the name of the poor.
But would she like
Personally,
gun carriage?
Personally, no. But in the name of the poor, she would accept anything.
Pope John Paul will not attend the funeral, reportedly for health reasons. The United Nations says 79 bodies have been pulled from a sunken ferry off Montreal, Haiti, and divers saw more than 100 bodies trapped on the sunken ferry.
A franchise holder in the Portuguese territory of Macau. Mourners in Calcutta, India are gathering today to mark a memorable moment in Mother Teresa's life. 51 years ago, the woman known as the Saint of the Gutter says she heeded a call from God to devote her life to the poor. To commemorate the anniversary, a private mass was held at the church where her body lies in state. And Mother Teresa will be given a state funeral in India on Saturday. In the Middle East, Secretary of State Madeleine Albright's first visit in her post included a 3-hour meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Stephen Clark.
The military took official charge of the nun's body today, a preliminary to the state funeral with full military honors planned for Saturday. The 87-year-old nun who dedicated her life to the forgotten among us died Friday of heart failure. 1 million people are expected to line the streets of Calcutta as the funeral procession passes to the ceremony at a soccer stadium. She'll be carried on the same carriage that was used for Mahatma Gandhi's funeral.
When News 2 returns, we're going to tell you about a deadly danger on the road.
And he reached out and saved lives. How the telephone company says thank you.
Well, you're doing a good
Today, 6 generals draped the Indian flag over her body as 100 nuns said a prayer. The military will maintain a constant vigil by her remains until the funeral Saturday. A senior Indian Army officer says Mother Teresa's body will be carried to her grave in the same gun carriage used for Mahatma Gandhi and the late Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. In London, volunteers are picking up that sea of flowers left in memory of Princess Diana. The flowers that are still fresh will be donated to nursing homes and hospitals.
Mourners have now come to pay their respects and view her body at a Calcutta church this week. Lines of mourners have stretched up to a mile long at times. Earlier, generals draped India's flag over her body. The government has decided to honour the Roman Catholic nun with a state funeral, a privilege usually reserved for presidents and prime ministers. The mass outpouring of grief since her death last Friday is a reflection of the millions of individual lives she touched. CNN's Anita Pratap talked with 2 of those individuals in the place where Mother Teresa began her work.
For the past 5 days, 72-year-old Philomena Maiti cries herself to sleep. Mother Teresa, the woman she knew for 50 years, is dead. Now who will care for us? When Mother was here, we felt wanted, we felt loved. Philomena lives in a Calcutta slum called Moti Jheel.
It is in this slum that Mother Teresa began her work half a century ago, caring for the poor, the sick, the starving and the illiterate. 35,000 people live in this slum. Mother Teresa transformed the lives of some of them.
Bolton Rai is one of them. He was 4 years old when he enrolled in Mother Teresa's school.
She gave us good foundation. We learned to interact with people, got a job easily.
The free school that Mother Teresa started in the slum will continue her work. The children are taught English, the local language Bengali, ethics and hygiene. She also gave food and medicines to the people.
If we didn't turn up at school, Mother would come looking for us at home. She would never beat us. She would feed us first and then scold us.
So moved was Mother Teresa by the plight of the people in this slum near her Loreto convent that she left the serene cloisters to work amidst the poor here, going on to be seen by many as a saint of the gutters. The overcrowded slum is mostly inhabited by Muslims, but there are Hindus and Christians as well. The slum lacks water, sanitation, proper houses. Mother helped me to build this house. I was a poor widow with 8 children. She helped me so much. Those whose lives have been touched by Mother Teresa's love say they feel orphaned now. My heart breaks when I think of the old days, says Philomena. The poor now have only God to rely on. Anita Pratap, CNN, Calcutta.
And CNN will have live coverage of Mother Teresa's funeral starting Saturday morning at 12 a.m. Eastern. And at 7 p.m. Saturday evening, Christiana Manpour will anchor a CNN special, Mother Teresa, Mother of Mercy.
A showdown is approaching in Bosnia, not on the battlefield, but at the ballot box. When Worldview returns, will democratic elections politically weaken or strengthen this man? And accused
funeral of Mother Teresa and a national day of mourning on Saturday. Today, the first military honors signaled the start of what will be a very elaborate ceremony. In Calcutta tonight, ABC's Deborah Wong.
It was the government's turn to honor Mother Teresa today. She was born in Macedonia, but it was the Indian flag that was lowered over her body as the rituals of the state funeral began. She belongs to the country now, said one woman. And she is now in the care of soldiers of the Indian Armed Forces, who will transport her body on the same gun carriage that carried Mahatma Gandhi on his final journey almost 5 decades ago. This is the military's dress rehearsal for the biggest international event to take place here in years. And with at least 90 foreign dignitaries expected to attend, the city is now in frenzied preparation. All along the parade route, which has just been extended, men are working around the clock to build makeshift sidewalks to accommodate what they expect will be enormous crowds. It's at this sports stadium where the procession will end. And while they rush to finish construction of an altar where the Pope's personal representative will celebrate the funeral mass before 12,000 invited guests, the nuns of Mother Teresa's order practice the hymns they will sing. Although many of those attending the funeral will be guests of the state, the sisters have set aside seats for those they serve, the homeless, the handicapped, and the infirm, the people they say Mother Teresa would have wanted there the most. Deborah Wong, ABC News, Calcutta, India.
One program note, Peter Jennings will broadcast from Calcutta tomorrow night, and later in the evening he will anchor a special expanded edition of Nightline beginning at 11:35, which will include live coverage of Mother Teresa's funeral. Other news around the world. In the Middle East today, harsh words from Secretary of State Madeleine Albright. She criticized Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat for not doing more to crack down on terrorism. And later
of hours in honor of Mother Teresa. It will take place in Calcutta, India, where the Roman Catholic nun devoted most of her life to some of the world's poorest people. CNN's Christiane Amanpour is in Calcutta, where it's the middle of the night. Christiane.
Judy, well, in about 6 hours from now, the funeral services will begin for Mother Teresa. They will start from the church where she is now lying in state. They will come along the route near where I'm standing right now. Right now, it is absolutely deserted, but in a few hours from now, it is expected to be jam-packed with the faithful who are coming to turn out to watch her funeral procession. Now, just as with Princess Diana's funeral a week ago today, the organizers here have had to extend the route to accommodate more than 1 million people who they expect to turn out. Already the dignitaries and world leaders have come here, have started to arrive in Calcutta, and the hundreds of thousands of people who've been lining up all week to see her continued to do so right till the last minute, when many thousands of them were turned away. They had waited all day, but when the hour came to close the doors, these people were turned away, angry at not getting a last glimpse of the woman they love.
What is this? It has been announced. It has been announced in the paper and also in the TV.
But that's not what they wanted to hear. Some just sat down. Others breached the barricades. Eventually, the police dispersed the disappointed. They made their peace and placed their offerings as close as they could. Before the doors closed on Mother Teresa's body, thousands had come for one last look, and perhaps a blessing from the woman who gave voice to their humanity. Now she is being prepared for the final journey, her funeral, her burial.
We love her. Forever we will think and pray and never forget her. She will always be in our heart.
Calcutta has poured out its heart this week. Captains of industry pay homage. Small businesses hoist banners. And everywhere there are signs to commemorate what this city calls its symbol of love and peace. She practiced and preached her charity far from the glittering lights of Calcutta's more fashionable streets, but her body is on view near here, and the well-off are glad that someone cared about their destitute. Merchants have done very little business since mourners claimed the sidewalks from the shoppers, and so for this week, the capitalists turned charitable.
She did so much for our country, isn't it? So what's the harm if I do something for a few days? Like, there's no business in sight, so might as well do something really good,
World leaders are coming in for Saturday's state funeral, and never has the spotlight shone so brightly on this city of teeming poor.
Never, because so many dignitaries are coming, so many VIPs are coming. Calcutta have never seen this thing before, and we are very busy.
Busy preparing for presidents, prime ministers, queens and first ladies. Hillary Clinton will lead the U.S. delegation to the funeral mass at Calcutta's indoor stadium. Indeed, Hillary Clinton and her delegation arrived in Calcutta several hours ago. They are among the few leaders here who are able to spend the night in Calcutta because all the accommodation here is completely booked up. Mrs. Clinton came with a congressional delegation and leaders of American religious organizations, and they will take part in the funeral beginning about 6 hours from now. As I said, more than 1 million people are due to come out and watch the funeral procession, and it is going to be telecast live on Indian television. Many millions more will be watching it like that. Judy?
Christiane, the fact that so many in this mostly Hindu nation would turn out for this Christian, for this Catholic nun, says something about her transcending religion, doesn't it?
Well, it does indeed, and people who we've spoken to in the crowds and the queues who've been waiting to see her body reach across all religions, Hindu, Muslim and Christian, and that is perhaps one of her chief strengths here. It has to be said also that Mother Teresa caused a lot of people here a great deal of discomfort by the relentless gaze that she brought on India's crushing poverty. Nonetheless, even though she was foreign-born, she was born of Albanian parents, became a naturalized Indian citizen, the leaders here have decided that only a state funeral would be a fitting tribute for the kind of work that she did, Judy.
Well, it is the middle of the night there. Christiane, thank you very much. Now to London and to Fanula.
Thank you, Judy. Well, since her death, the idea that the Catholic Church might make a saint of Mother Teresa has been the subject of much discussion. Earlier today, I discussed the process of canonization and how it might apply to the late Mother Teresa with Father Kit Cunningham, the rector of St. Etheldreda's Church here in London.
Well, it's a legal process in a sense. First of all, you have the beatification of a person. He becomes blessed. And then after that, you have the process that leads up to sainthood. But before that starts, there is another factor which is very important, and that is what is referred to sometimes as sensus fidelium, what the ordinary people think. And if the ordinary people think that somebody is a saint, a very holy person, then you'll find some sort of cult gathering around his or her name. Now, in the case, of course, of Mother Teresa, one might almost say straight away, because of communication, everybody knows her, Mother Teresa. Everybody thinks she's a wonderful lady, a very holy lady. So you might almost say that Rome, in fact, the Vatican will not, in fact, have to delay long before, in fact, they start the process. But normally speaking, they leave it for a couple of years because one mustn't be emotional, one mustn't go over the top or anything like that. And after all, it has to settle down into what is basically a legal process where, in fact, you have somebody promoting, the postulator who promoting that the person is in fact a saint, and there's another character called the devil's advocate, that's the translation that we give to it, who in fact wants to find the reasons why the person should not be a saint. In other words, I won't say just searching for dirt or anything like that, but, you know, applies a critical eye to the information given and to the statements made by people, because otherwise an awful lot of emotion can go into this, and you might get people wanting to, you know, push somebody forward, etc., and what might be put forward is not necessarily totally accurate.
So basically, you're building up a record of somebody's life. Now, that presumably 100 years ago would have taken a lot longer than today. Yeah. What do you think the effect of television and modern communications has been on someone, say, like Mother Teresa?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the fact is that obviously it will speed up the process, certainly, and the information is there. But let me also put, there's another side to it, and that is Mother Teresa is undoubtedly a very holy person, but there will be her critics. There are those who think that her work was possibly slightly misguided. She might have done good in some other way. This is a view. I don't have to agree with it. I think what she did was absolutely splendid and certainly fulfilled the gospel precepts. But television and general communications, after all, give some of the good points, but they give also some of the perhaps what people consider the contrary points.
Do you think that Mother Teresa will be made a saint, and if so, soon?
Well, I don't know how soon, but I think certainly in God's good time she will be made a saint, because obviously she has given to us such marvellous example, and one sees she's a woman of prayer, of charity, when in fact her will, I believe, is written, if it's ever been written. What has she left in material terms? 2 saris and a bucket.
Father Kit Cunningham of St. Etheldreda's Church here in London. And CNN's live coverage of the funeral of Mother Teresa begins less than 6 hours from now at midnight Eastern. That's 9 p.m. Pacific. Saturday, we will have a CNN special, Mother Teresa, Mother of Mercy. That comes your way at 7 p.m. Eastern.
U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright has arrived in Egypt, the latest stop on her tour of the Middle East. On Saturday, she is scheduled to discuss her efforts to revive the region's peace process with Egypt.
9 News.
Mother Teresa, rest in peace. Dear Mother Teresa, pray for us. Amen.
India and the world extend one last gesture of appreciation for the work of Mother Teresa.
This is a CNN Headline News live event.
I'm Linda Stouffer at CNN Center in Atlanta. The body of Mother Teresa is being taken to rest at the place where she dedicated her life helping the poor and the sick. In Calcutta, India, a military escort is now accompanying her body to Mother House. That's the headquarters of the Missionaries of Charity Order, which Mother Teresa headed. She's scheduled to be buried there soon at a private ceremony. Her state funeral in a Calcutta stadium ended less than an hour ago. People gathered at the stadium to honor the Roman Catholic nun who died September 5th at the age of 87. Hillary Rodham Clinton and other international dignitaries laid wreaths at the base of her casket. Mother Teresa's body made its way to the stadium in a 3-mile procession route through the streets of Calcutta, and thousands of mourners gathered to watch. Some tossed flower petals from balconies. Mother Teresa won the 1979 Nobel Peace Prize for her lifetime efforts to help the world's sick and poor. Eloquent praise for her life's work is coming from both world leaders and the many citizens who revered her. It's a long life of charity and caring that people around the world are honoring today. Tom Mintier looks at how people have been mourning Mother Teresa's passing and remembering the work she did while she was here.
In life, she was one of the faces you could always identify in a crowd, Mother Teresa. A tiny Catholic nun with a huge mission, caring for those others couldn't or wouldn't. Her death may have been expected for some time. It came much too early. To Calcutta's poor and the rest of India, she was known by that single name, Mother. The morning after her death, hundreds gathered outside her house as her body was transferred to St. Thomas Church. For the next 6 days and nights, they came to say goodbye. There were India's political leaders. Prime Minister Gujral paid Mother Teresa the highest compliment, comparing her to Mahatma Gandhi. They lined up each day by the thousands to pass her body. Some stood for hours in monsoon rains to say farewell to Mother. Came from all levels of society, some well-to-do, but most have learned to live without. Those were the people Mother Teresa worked and prayed so hard for. Now they came to offer their prayers.
We ask them to pray, continue praying for us, that we may continue the work that the Lord has entrusted to us through our mother, that we keep faithful to the charism the Lord has given to the church through our mother.
For the people, Mother Teresa was someone they could relate to, a person who may have rubbed shoulders with royalty, but was still willing to reach down to the gutter and help those less fortunate.
It's a great loss of someone who cared for the poorest.
When I met her for the first time, I really felt that she is my mother.
It's a great loss to the world. Not only to India or not only to a particular nation, it's a loss to the world.
If there is any God, Mother is like that.
She has done so much to the mankind, to the poor, to the downtrodden, that it is really, we are really proud of her. That she was one of a lady who stayed in Calcutta, who was with us.
It was her sacrifice and service to the poor that brought Mother Teresa to the world's attention. She was known by some as the Saint of the Gutters. Her campaign against human misery brought help to those who needed it most.
The institution will continue. Mother will be sorely missed. She's a world figure. World attention on the charities will certainly diminish to a degree, but their work, which is why they exist, will continue.
At the small church in downtown Calcutta, the Nobel laureate accepted the prayers and flowers of a public who adored her. The numbers were staggering each of the 6 days the church was open to the public. The line to enter often stretched more than 2 kilometers from the church snaking through the business district of downtown Calcutta. She had become so well known around the world for her work in this city that when some people mentioned Calcutta, Mother Teresa's name would often be in the same sentence.
One has to wonder what Mother Teresa would think about all the attention devoted to her over the past week. Those who knew her well say it would probably upset her. Her work, she would probably say, is what's important. Please stop grieving and get back to it. Tom Mintier, CNN, Calcutta.
In other news, the body of Henri Paul has been released for burial. He was the driver of the Mercedes that crashed in Paris, killing Princess Diana and her companion, Dodi Fayed. The planned funeral for Paul was postponed.
Minutes later, at 55 minutes after the hour. Comcast Newsmakers, only on CNN Headline News.
Dear Mother Teresa, rest in peace. Dear Mother Teresa, pray for us. Amen.
India and the world bid fond farewell to a woman who spent her life uplifting the downtrodden. Good morning. This is CNN Headline News. I'm Linda Stouffer. Mother Teresa has reached her final resting place. The coffin carrying her body arrived at the headquarters of her Missionaries of Charity Order in Calcutta, India, about an hour ago. Then she was buried in a private service. Her body was taken there following a 3-hour-long special funeral mass at an indoor stadium. International dignitaries, religious leaders, as well as many poor and sick people listened to speakers at the service reflect on how Mother Teresa dedicated her life to others. First Lady Hillary Rodham Clinton, who represented the United States, laid a wreath beside the base of the nun's coffin. A Vatican representative urged people at the packed service to continue Mother Teresa's work.
The homage we are paying to the memory of this humble sister will be in vain if we, believers and men and women of goodwill everywhere, do not take up where she left off. The poor are still with us. The poor are still with us.
The end of Mother Teresa's burial was marked by a 21-gun salute. Mother Teresa was considered by many people to be a modern-day saint. Now begins the process of perhaps formally becoming a saint in the Catholic Church. Jim Clancy looks at her life.
The world bids farewell to one of the 20th century's most remarkable contradictions. A small, humble figure who stood unmistakably taller than the rest of us. A raspy, almost whispering voice whose simple message thundered in our ears.
We are all children of God.
created for greater things, to love and to be loved.
Mother Teresa stood for better things, showering the poor, the helpless, and the homeless with love. It was her lifetime of action, of work, not words, that brought the world's powers to their feet in silent tribute.
Members will rise. The House will recognize the passing of Mother Teresa.
Or in search of words to mark her departure.
She served the poor, the suffering, and the dying. And in so doing, she served as an inspiration and a challenge to all the rest of us.
As the Vatican paid tribute, word that Pope John Paul II may put Mother Teresa on a swift course toward beatification, the step before sainthood in the Roman Catholic Church. It's a distinction that in due course will require evidence she worked miracles. In the summer of 1982, as West Beirut burned in the fires of civil war and regional conflict, it seemed like a miracle. A sustained air and artillery assault on the PLO and its allies by Israel left hospitals and mental homes shattered by direct hits and collateral damage. In the midst of the fighting, Mother Teresa demanded and got an unprecedented ceasefire, ignored warnings, and crossed the battle lines to rescue 37 mentally handicapped children. Most of the hospital workers had fled in well-founded fear of the fighting. Mother Teresa's courage drew attention to the plight of other children trapped by the fighting and led to a Red Cross-sponsored evacuation that brought them out of the battle zone. It was the fundamental question Mother Teresa's life raised again and again. If she was doing something about it, shouldn't we be doing something too? As the world mourns her passing, masses are drawing people together in her memory from Tokyo to the Balkans. Tributes pour in from places like South Africa, Albania, and Iran. Tributes not bound by politics or religious beliefs. India afforded Mother Teresa a state funeral that honors her stature as a genuine world leader. A frail figure of human dignity and dedication to God passes from our midst, but leaves behind the question, the challenge really for all of us. Wherever there are the poor, the sick, the people in need, we will hear that challenge. What would Mother Teresa be doing about it? And shouldn't we be doing something too? Jim Clancy, CNN reporting.
In other news, Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak is calling a meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, encouraging. At a news conference following talk.
But this was not social work Mother Teresa undertook. For her, it was service to Jesus. He was the center of her life.
Some time back, the sisters picked up a man from the street. And as they lifted him up, the whole of his back remained in the footpath. They brought him to our home. And his condition was terrible. But at the end, he died with a big smile on his face. And I asked the sister, "Sister, what did you feel when you were touching him? What did you feel deep down in your heart?" And that young sister answered, "Mother, I was very, very, very sure that it was Jesus I was touching. That was his body, his suffering, his terrible suffering that I was sharing with him."
This focus on Christ made Mother and her sisters fierce advocates for the unborn. Whether at the National Prayer Breakfast in Washington, D.C., or at gatherings around the world, she urgently preached the sanctity of all human life.
How the mother herself destroys, kills her own child through abortion. And so the abortion has become the greatest destroyer of peace, of love, because it destroys the very image of God. For that little unborn child in the womb of his mother has been created for greater things, to love and to be loved.
And no life was too small for Mother. In one of her final TV interviews in the U.S., she asked me to
tell them that anybody who doesn't want a child, to give it to Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa wants every little child.
From a simple home for the dying in Calcutta, Mother Teresa's order now runs nearly 600 homes worldwide. But Father Andrew Apostoli told us Mother never referred to them as homes.
She wouldn't say how many houses they had. She would refer to tabernacles. Every tabernacle represented a different house. So she says, Father, we have 565 tabernacles. You know, and that meant 565 convents.
In 1986, the Holy Father visited her first tabernacle in Calcutta. Mother Teresa considered this the happiest day of her life. It was one of their many visits together through the years. Providentially, this relationship would point the way to Mother's successor.
Mother Teresa was asking the sisters to pray for different priests and bishops and so on. The Holy Father said to her, don't forget, Mother, I am a priest too. Please give me a sister to pray for me. Sister Nirmala was the one Mother Teresa appointed
to pray.
to pray for the Holy Father.
Sister Nirmala, seen here with Mother, was elected Superior General in March of 1997 with Mother Teresa's blessing. But even as she stepped down from leading the order, Mother Teresa maintained one last wish.
Would you like them to open a house in China. We have opened 2 houses in Vietnam.
Okay.
And beautiful work there for Jesus. And we are hoping to open in China. So pray very hard.
We will.
She said, I do not want to die until I open a house in China. I said, Mother Teresa, the Chinese government has done that for you in cooperation with the British, because you already have houses in Hong Kong, and now Hong Kong belongs once again to mainland China. So you have achieved your dream. You have sisters in China. There's only one China now. I've asked myself since, did she then decide that she could die in peace so that I kind of take her away from the world?
After a lifetime spent serving Christ through the poor, Mother Teresa finally began her eternal rest on September 5th, 1997. Her vibrant legacy lives on. There are now more than 4,500 missionaries of charity throughout the world, women committed to Mother's missionary task, loving Christ through the poor.
Give whatever it takes with a big smile. This is the surrender to God. And to accept to be cut to pieces, and yet every piece to belong only to Him. This is the surrender. To accept all the people that come, the work that you happen to do, to have today maybe you have a good meal, and tomorrow maybe you have nothing. There is no water in the pump, all right? To accept. And to give whatever it takes. It takes your good name, it takes your health, it takes, yes. That's the surrender. And that is you are free then.
It's a remarkable person, Mother Teresa. Can you tell us for a moment, you heard a moment there of Cardinal O'Connor talk about how concerned she was, that she didn't want to die. Talking about suffering, this is something you may not have seen, and it is a speech she gave several years ago. I will go to that tape.
Let us thank God for His great love, for bringing us together to show our love for Him by showing our love for each other. Let us ask Our Lady to give us her heart, so beautiful, so pure, so immaculate, her heart so full of love and humility, that we may be able to receive Jesus in the bread of life, love Him as she loved Him, and serve Him in the distressing disguise of the poorest of the poor. In the Gospel we read that God loved the world so much that he gave Jesus to the most pure Virgin Mary. And she, on receiving Jesus, went in haste to take care, to do the work of a handmaid in the house of her cousin Elizabeth, who was with a child. And something very strange happened when Mary came into the house of Elizabeth. The little unborn child leaped with joy in the womb of his mother at the presence of Jesus. Very strange that God used an unborn child to proclaim the coming of Christ. And we know what terrible things are happening today to the little unborn child. How the mother herself destroys, kills her own child through abortion. And so the abortion has become the greatest destroyer of peace, of love, because it destroys the very image of God. For that little unborn child in the womb of his mother has been created for greater things, to love and to be loved. And by destroying it, the mother destroys that presence for which that little one had been created. So today, when we are all together here, let us thank our parents for wanting us, for loving us, for giving us the joy of living. For none of us would be here if our mother didn't want us, if she had aborted us. For 1 second, let us pray and thank. Jesus came to give us the good news that God is love and that He loves each one of us and that He has created each one of us for a very, very special purpose, to love and to be loved. And to make it easy for us to love one another, He said, whatever you do to the least of my brethren, you did it to me. If you give a glass of water in my name, you give it to me. If you receive a little child in my name, you receive me. There is the thing. Abortion destroys that beautiful child who comes to us as the presence of Jesus.
That video comes to us courtesy of the Family Apostolate. Boy, some strong words there about pro-life, certainly. There was a resolution that passed Congress yesterday honoring Mother Teresa. They stripped a line in it that said, Mother Teresa acknowledged the sanctity of life and admonished abortion as the greatest destroyer of peace in the world today. The Congress removed that. They saluted her for her work with the sick and dying, but didn't want that message in there. Why do you think, and how important was this pro-life to Mother Teresa? Teresa, talking about a very interesting aspect of her ministry.
You know, St. Peter is very strict. When I began work, and I got very high fever, and I felt that I died and went to heaven. And St. Peter told me that there were no slums in the heaven, so go back. And I got so angry with him, and I told him, all right, since there are no slums in heaven, I will fill the heaven with slum people. And then we opened this home for the dying. In Calcutta alone, we have picked up from the streets of Calcutta 42,000 people, sick and dying, destitute. And of that number, 19,000 have died. And nobody has died without a ticket for St. Peter. We always ask them, do you want a blessing by which your sins will be forgiven and you will see God? They don't know what is baptism. If they have strength enough, we speak of Jesus to them, but as a rule, they're always at the last. So we ask them, do you want a blessing by which your sins will be forgiven and you will see God? And out of the 19,000, all the 19,000 took that blessing and went to heaven. And once I had a very strange experience. The man had died in the street, and it was the certificate, and they took him. Our Hindu people cremate their dead, and so he had been taken to the cremation place, and he had been already put on that cremation place. And then according to the Hindu law, they recite a number of prayers and they go around the body praying. And then when they have finished the prayer, they put the fire in the mouth and the body begins to burn. And so when they put the fire on his mouth, he suddenly sat up and said, I want to drink water. And I said, quickly, they took him up, put him in the car, brought him to our house. And I happened to be there. So I had to take him. He had been already covered with the Ganges mud. That is a holy river. And so they covered the person with mud and so on. So I washed his face, and I found every part of his body was dead, except there was a little bit of life here. So I baptized him without even asking him. And he opened wide his eyes, gave me a beautiful smile, and died. And then I said, I told Jesus, I said, Jesus, how is that? I'm working for 60 years for you, and I'm still struggling to go to heaven, and this man came in 5 minutes, went to heaven.
That was typical of Mother Teresa's humor, I think. What do you make of that?
Well, Mother, of course, her great burning love for Jesus wanted to. The Spirit of God is at work here.
Yeah. Before we go to the funeral mass in Calcutta and more calls, this is Mother Teresa's last message. Family Apostolate gave it to us very generously. This was recorded in June of this year in Washington, D.C. Take a look at this last message of Mother Teresa.
Love one another as God loves each one of us. Where does this love begin? In our own family. How does it begin? By praying together. Family that prays together stays together. And if you stay together, there will be love, peace, and unity and joy in family. And there will be no destroying the life of the child, of the unborn. Where there is unity and love and peace, the child is always most welcome. And I've seen it even in the poor families, how generous and loving they are in spite of the physical difficulties that they may have. We are consecrated our life to give wholehearted free service to the poorest of the poor. That's how they come in our life, and we love them very much and help them with their families to grow in love together. So keep praying for us that we may continue God's work with great love. We are now in 120 countries, and we have 584 houses. And we count only the convents, not count the houses for the people. And we have everywhere people's houses, and we have on these unwed mothers, and so there's such a beautiful love and help us come from all the people to help us to do our God's work with great love. So pray for us that we continue God's work with great love and help us to do it well. God bless you all. Yeah, very good.
What's that?
Finished.
Finished.
Achha.
Thank you very much.
But pray before you show to the people.
Yes.
Pray that it be for the glory of God and good of people.
Amen.
No other reason. Don't give any other.
Amen.
Good for the glory of God and good of people. No other.
Yes.
And the more we pray that God will give many graces to the people to stop the abortion. Because they know that they can, God will help them to have the child, to save the child.
Yes.
But we must pray. Amen. Pray, and love begins at home. That's why there's so much suffering, so much misery in the world today. Because there's less and less love. How can their love live when there is killing? It's a real killing.
Yes.
So anyway, we'll pray.
Okay.
Yeah, God bless you.
You too, Mother. And
so we'll pray that God's blessing be with you all.
Appreciate
that. And especially, always pray together. Family that prays together stays together. If you stay together, you will love each other as God loves each one in the family. So this is my prayer for you.
Father Andrew, you see there, she really wraps up her whole ministry. She talks about serving the poorest of the poor. She reaches out again to families, which was a huge part of her ministry, strengthening families, asking them to pray together, to stay together. And here's the military escort. Mother Teresa is being accorded a state funeral. That's why you see her body there wrapped in the flag of India. This is normally an honor reserved for military figures, government officials. It is a high honor in India. For those of you joining us by shortwave, there it looks like 8 soldiers carrying Mother as pallbearers. They are moving quite slowly in procession from St. Thomas's Church, and they are on their way to Netaji Stadium, which will be the locale of Mother Teresa's funeral mass. They couldn't have it in the church. The church was too small to accommodate the expected crowds. More than 12,000 people are expected to be in the stadium during Mother Teresa's funeral mass. We're seeing heads hung low and the crowds lining the streets there. Father Andrew, what do you think would go through Mother's mind if she were watching all this pomp and pageantry surrounding her?
Maybe she's probably watching it from heaven, isn't she?
I bet she is.
Yes. Well, as Father Benedict said earlier, this would not be something that would faze her and make a big thing. I think she would recognize, and she does clearly, I'm sure, realize the people need this outpouring. You know, she was a person who shunned publicity. She did not like when people took her photograph. You know, she hated to be photographed. In fact, she told me, she says, Father, I have an agreement with God. Every time they take my picture, one soul has to come out of purgatory. So she says, after a big celebration, when people are constantly taking her photograph, she says, purgatory is empty for a while. So I'm sure she'd feel purgatory is empty after this.
Now, you see this, the procession here, for those of you who are watching. There are 11 military vehicles in this funeral procession. It is quite grand. You have bands and crowds of people there, the acolytes holding high a crucifix just before, in front of the body of Mother Teresa. They all are wearing these very ornate plumed hats that I suppose are reserved for special occasions like this. It's very interesting. All the soldiers lining up along the path have their heads hung low, I suppose in respect to the greatness of this woman. And she is and was greatly revered in India, which is strange for a woman who was not a native.
That's right.
She is being accorded, an honor that was given last to Mahatma Gandhi, and government officials. They, as they pass the body here, they are moving it to a gun carriage. The carriage was the one used for Mahatma Gandhi during his state funeral. So this is quite an honor here, and you see the rosary there in Mother's hand. The procession will take a 3-mile route to the stadium. It'll go past colonial landmarks, including the Victoria Memorial, the Calcutta racetrack, and the Eden Gardens cricket ground. Now it looks like they are stopping and they are placing the body upon that ceremonial gun carriage. Very solemn event, and you can see certainly in the attitude and the posture of the military escort there. Beautiful flowers surrounding the white flowers surrounding the gun carriage. I imagine her sisters are at home taking all this in, the missionaries around the world, the missionaries of charity who could not be there. As you know, we're having worked with the sisters. They operate on a limited income, and they were simply unable to fly even the sisters there in India to the funeral. Only a certain number of them could make it to Calcutta. The rest are watching via television, and as we are tonight.
Maybe a number of them are watching right here on EWTN. I know our friars and sisters in our community are watching there tonight.
Well, a big hello to all of them if they are watching.
I did notice before, Raymond, that Sister Nirmala was behind the coffin. I'd recognized her face there.
Sister Nirmala?
Yes.
Yes, I imagine she would be there, part of that procession. Now, 170 people, including the poor that Mother Teresa served, will be following this procession, a full 170 people. It's very interesting also, I think, we'll see in the process of this procession, that the lepers and the poor, the undertrodden, the castaways, will suddenly move to center stage in this event, which is not something our culture and the world is accustomed to.
That's correct. They would be the people who would be the unimportant people, the fringe people, or perhaps even below the what we would call in our country below the poverty line. Certainly, they would be people who would not have that influence and generally would not be associated here. But this is the gift that Mother has given. This is part of her legacy, Raymond, in the sense that she has reminded us of the dignity of these people, that everyone is important before God. As she herself said, at the moment of death, everyone is equal. There's no preference given to the influential or to the mighty. We're all the same at that moment.
And we should also mention, Mother Teresa was a woman who chose to live as the people she served, a poor, humble life. And in that choosing, she really raised them up. Of course, Christ acting through her raised them up and gave them the full dignity they were accorded as human beings and deserved as human beings. And she really blazed a new trail in that area, certainly in India, and I think set a standard for the whole world in the doing. Here we see a close-up of Mother Teresa there. It looks like they've removed the glass case that was surrounding her body. Or maybe it's just the angle we're looking at. We can't quite tell. It's I saw a moment ago some of the sisters getting up on the gun carriage, but I suppose I don't know if they're standing on the front. I can't quite tell from this from the angle here. This is as I said, it's a 3-mile route. The funeral procession had to be expanded by a mile and a half or so to accommodate the large crowds. Wow. There were so many people that wanted to get a last look and pay their final respects to this woman that India called the saint of the gutters, the angel of the gutters.
You know, another interesting thing, Raymond, is that Mother became prominent in the early 60s. It's kind of like when the world took notice of her. At least from my own experience, I was first aware of her when Pope Paul VI made his pilgrimage to India. I think it was in 1967. And Pope John the 23rd, when he convoked the Second Vatican Council, he made 2 pilgrimages outside of Rome. He went to Loreto to place the council under the patronage of the Holy Families, particularly Our Lady of Loreto, and prayed that the council would assist family life. He also made a pilgrimage to Assisi, and there he placed the council under the patronage of St. Francis, so that he said he wanted the church to become aware that we are the church of the poor, in the sense of the Anawim, who live not for the treasures of this world, but to seek our help from God. So he prayed that we would be aware of being a church of the poor and for the poor, ministering to the poor, preaching the good news to the poor. And a few years later, Mother Teresa emerges almost, you might say, incarnating in her very life and mission what Pope John the 23rd had prayed for. And to me, she became a missionary of spreading this message throughout the world.
For our viewers, or our listeners rather, via shortwave, we should tell them the military escort is now passing through Middleton Row. This is a part of the 3-mile route that will carry Mother Teresa to the stadium where her funeral mass will be celebrated. There's Mother's body. They're throwing flowers onto the body as it passes, onto her casket. She is in an open casket, amazingly. They had said she would pass by with glass covered. There is no glass there. She is exposed from the waist up, I suppose, in that casket. And you can see the throng of people there moving along the sidelines of the procession route. And little white flowers are being hurled from time to time into the passing gun carriage, and they're at the body of Mother Teresa. It's quite an event, and really a historical event, because we have this woman who is largely regarded as a saint in our time, and watching her move toward her final resting place. It's also interesting the place they've chosen. The Missionaries of Charity headquarters will be Mother Teresa's final resting place. And as the world takes notice, the dignitaries of the world and all the eyes of the world are on this really simple woman who emerged not from a palace or from a pulpit, but from the gutters.
It almost staggers the imagination that someone could begin a mission picking dying people off the streets in what is regarded as certainly one of the, if not the actual poorest city in the world. And you'd ever think that she would receive the honors of a state funeral,
a high state funeral,
and that the world would know her name would become a household name, Mother Teresa.
Yes.
It's beyond
amazing.